Welcome to my podcasts called Discover Your Power, where you will learn how to release limiting beliefs, create abundance, and manifest the life you deserve and that truly works for you. My name is Jania Aebi, Transformational Healer, author, and coach. There is so much more joy, health, wealth, and success available to you when you get a true perspective on how life really works. I want you to have what you deeply desire, and these podcasts will help you find your truth, unlock your potential, and empower your life. In view of what the world is going through right now, with the COVID-19 pandemic and people asking how to deal with the fear, the distress, the confinement, and the shortages they are experiencing, I would like to bring maybe a more expanded perspective to this question. First of all, while the virus is what it is and can be dangerous, it's not on the scale of the Black Death or other such diseases we've had in the Middle Ages. The measures that are being taken by the authorities to reduce the risk of contamination are good, but we also need to be disciplined enough to apply them. That calls for a level of responsibility from each individual, whether they have the symptoms or not. We need to think of the well-being of everyone, not only ourselves, because the food shortage that has been experienced in the beginning of the pandemic is the result of the fear that has replaced common sense in many people. Don't blame the virus. It's our feelings that triggered our actions that are the cause. We did not take the time to think and reacted instead of figuring out the best response. The shortage was only temporary, because at root there is no lack. Nature is still producing fruits and vegetables, factories are still functioning, and the lack we were experiencing was due to a lack of common sense and an inability to evenly share what is available. When in fear, taking a moment to reflect on how to respond to the situation is always beneficial, and there have been some who did not give in to the fear and rush to the shops. They are still alive and no worse off materially than anyone else, but so much better off mentally and emotionally than those who gave in to the fear. And that deep-rooted fear will continue to play out whenever a challenge of any kind occurs. We need to remember we're spiritual beings first, and only temporarily physical ones, and decide to respond and act from the light of divinity, not from an identification with the personality or the ego. We can't really separate the two, since the spiritual permeates and animates the physical. But we do have the responsibility to choose from which aspect of our wholeness we want to act. Let's start by looking at the global material level, which is such a big concern at the present time. Of course, the global level rises up out of the individual. Everything starts at the individual level. We are currently faced with many global issues which personally we can do nothing about, whether it's climate change, wars, terrorism, millions of refugees, or a pandemic, where we can't change the rules and regulations governments are putting into place for our protection. If we give in to fear about it all, which is being spread by the media, or start looking for who's to blame, get angry, sad, or resentful, none of that is helping the issue. In fact, it's making it worse because we are adding our negative energies to the ones already being generated by so many. For those who are personally involved in a traumatic situation or personally impacted by these events, it's really difficult to rise out of the fear, despair, and anger. So it's up to us, somewhat removed from the actual scenes of destruction, discrimination, and injustice that we see on TV or hear about in the news. It's up to us to generate the positive, divine energies so much needed to counterbalance the negativity. We are the ones with enough understanding of how life works to activate the divine qualities that seem to be missing in the situations we heard about or seen on TV. It's all up to us, and that means you and me. So how do we do that? We don't often think of invoking divine light or the violet flame of transmutation to be anchored within the negative situation we see and can do nothing about. But that is a powerful catalyst for change. We don't often think of forgiving as a means to deal with the negativity out there in the world. And yet, it's one of the most powerful ways we can contribute. So instead of going into fear and blame, can we just call for the violet consuming flame to forgive the unconsciousness that makes people act in unthinking or destructive ways? Can we call for the light at the core of the virus or the disease to become manifest instead of expounding on its harmful qualities? Then we are adding to the light of the world rather than contributing to maintaining the darkness. Most people don't know how to stand for the high values of divinity without going into blame and resistance. When we see political leaders with agendas that don't meet our ideals, we don't know how to stand for truth without using the same blame, criticism, and judgment that unconscious beings use. We just point them in the opposite direction. By doing that, we're not adding to the light. We're just reflecting darkness back to itself. It's our unconsciousness that's fighting their unconsciousness. And we have a battle on our hands that can only generate more darkness. So when we notice a political agenda that a government or a corporation is putting forward, which promotes discrimination of any kind, or cuts back our God-given freedoms, or does not uphold divine qualities of peace, harmony, and abundance for all, we let them know in whatever way we can find, peaceful marches and demonstrations, that they're not upholding divine values that are our values. We let them know that we are also a part of this nation, and that our point of view and perspective is not being recognized. We're not going into battle against them. We're not opposing their views, which they have a right to. We are simply stating that our perspective must also be taken into account. Can you see how this is a very different approach? We are standing for the light. We are standing for the truth. We are supporting any movement which upholds freedom, peace, abundance, safety, and security for all people, all communities, all races, and all cultures. We want well-being for all beings and all creatures, and proclaim it peacefully, consciously, and compassionately, without needing to blame or judge anybody. And we need to forgive everything unconscious beings did in the past or are doing in the present, because any anger, resentment, or blame we feel puts us squarely in the camp of darkness, and we're no longer adding light. Forgiveness of wrongs is not at all saying that something was okay when it clearly was not. Killing innocent people, or for that matter any people, is clearly not something ordained by God. Thou shalt not kill was God's command to Moses, and there is nothing in the Quran either that commands killing. Our responsibility as divine beings is to be the open space through which light is allowed to enter the world. We must be the ones reminding the world that light does exist, that light doesn't fight the darkness. Simply, when light appears, darkness dissolves and returns to its original state as light. Darkness fights. Light liberates darkness. Our thoughts are powerful, especially when backed by feelings. When our thoughts come from a place of light, which is love, compassion, and allowance, darkness is dissolved. It may seem difficult to send blessings to a war scene or to any situation where you perceive that harm has been done. But this is where you must step back into your soul's perspective. On the human level, you can see the hurt, but your soul has a different viewpoint, which you can't see or understand when stuck in the human perspective. However, there is one thing you do know for sure, and that is, Source or God loves every single being and thing equally and unconditionally, and all life is always conspiring for our ultimate good, our highest evolution. You also know that even terrorists, even the perpetrators of atrocities, have a spark of divinity within them, which has been covered up by the life they've had, by the beliefs they hold, the conditioning they've had since childhood, and which they never questioned, and who knows what else. If you had been born in their culture, their circumstances, had their upbringing, if you were walking in their shoes, you would probably be doing the same. They volunteered to come into this life to play that unsavory role, to allow you to assert and uphold your truth, your light, your wisdom and integrity, and doing it in ways that brings harm to no one, in ways that are harmonious and peaceful. Whatever you are called to do, whether in your personal life, your community, or your nation, you do it with the consciousness that you are simply promoting the highest values of divinity in a space where they've been forgotten or ignored. You become a pioneer of a new spiritual reality and show the world not what you're protesting against, but what you're standing for. And that is for truth, peace, love, unity, freedom, joy, compassion, and equality. You start to voice those values in your private conversations with your family and friends. You speak them in the office with colleagues, with groups, in other areas of your life, and training everyone you meet to a higher ideal than they may have at present. You could also live according to those values in your private life without ever voicing them. And that's called teaching by example. You become a catalyst for change in your environment. And that's the only area where you can have an influence. however big or small that area is. It requires courage and commitment to your true values. And when people see you unshakable in your beliefs, as well as kind, understanding, and compassionate to everyone, whether they agree or disagree with you, that divine flame in their hearts is activated and will start growing and expanding. You will have planted a seed, and it's up to them to nurture it and expand it. You just shine your light, regardless of whether it has an impact or not, because that's who you are. And now, let's bring this down to the material level of something you can actually do when faced with a situation where you have no power or possibility of changing it. It's really simple, but requires remembering to do it. Whatever you see on TV, on the news, whatever you hear at work, whatever you witness that triggers you, upsets you, or pushes your buttons, you now no longer go into fear, horror, rejection, or hatred. You remember, this is just a reminder that there are two sides to a coin, two ends to every stick that can't be separated, and those are different. When you're faced with a side you don't like, you turn it over to the other side. So, internally, it doesn't have to be out loud. Your internal consciousness is enough. Internally, you go to the opposite quality they may be expressing or you're feeling, and bless those people, events, or situations with the other side of that coin. So when you see conflict, you bless both parties with peace. When you see anger, you say or you think, may you be blessed with happiness. When you see poverty, may you be blessed with abundance. To someone in grief, you send the silent message, may you be blessed with joy. When you see injustice, abuse, or ill treatment of any kind, may you be blessed with love. And if you can't right away think of an opposite quality, a simple, heartfelt, may you be blessed is enough. But remember, a blessing or any other thought, to be effective, must be focused and felt. It's not enough to just say the words. Take a moment to feel what you're saying. Feel the love pouring out of you to its destination. In that moment, you are truly being God to the life around you. And remember that you are sending blessings not only to the victim, but also to the victimizer. Because the only thing that can change anything negative, anything unacceptable or criminal, is love. Remember, you are the highest representation of divinity in this world, with a responsibility to be the space through which divine love can flow into this realm of individual choice. To transmute the shadows created by free will back into the perfection Source already is and will forever be. You're not condoning unconscious or criminal behavior. You're purifying your own consciousness, and through the principle of oneness, you're also purifying everything in other people's consciousness. It's done through prayer and willingness to see as God sees, because you are in the realm of free will, and God cannot and will not impose His will on yours. You have to choose to surrender your ego's ideas of how the world is dishonest, devious, violent, and treacherous, and that you must protect, defend, and safeguard yourself. Go back in time and in imagination till that moment when you were one with God, when you had everything God has, you knew everything God knew, you could do everything God was doing, and there was peace. Then you chose to incarnate, to come into the three-dimensional world of experience, and chose to believe in separation from your source. You no longer thought you had everything you desired, but had to get it somehow from the world around you. That false belief started the downward spiral of competition, conflict, struggle, and strife, leading to violence, wars, and aggression of every kind. Now you can choose again to either keep living in the shadows created by false beliefs, or to become a channel for the mind of God and the gift of God to be expressed through you in the realm of free will, for the dissolving of those shadows. And the good news is, when you forgive yourself for that belief in separation and start seeing oneness, you can live in the sunshine of God's grace even when the person next to you still lives in the shadows of their own belief in separation. It's like when you are in a plane high up with blue sky and sunshine all around, and below you see a cloud casting a shadow on a portion of the earth. Those people in the shadow are in the darkness of their separation from the sunlight, but you, above the cloud, are in the light. You can see the cloud, but it doesn't affect you or your life. In the same way, the clouds of others' false beliefs don't have to affect you or your life when you're rooted in your own divinity, with separation no longer in your consciousness. I trust that this has been valuable and helpful. Do you want to know more? Check out my website, JaniaAebi.com, where you can find much free material. I also encourage you to get my most recent book called Forgiveness, A Path to Create Miracles. It's available in paperback and Kindle from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other similar venues. Don't miss any of these episodes by subscribing to this channel, and I thank you for your willingness to explore more of the abundance that life is always offering to you. I send you my love, and will speak to you again soon.